Being able to focus and feel motivated with ADHD in our neurotypical society can be challenging. And there is one thing that can make it feel almost impossible. This one thing is a dysregulated nervous system. In this episode, we'll explore what that means, why it's a huge problem for focusing and getting yourself to start and complete tasks with ADHD, and what to do about it. You'll walk away with how to overcome this additional obstacle and hear about a way to get help doing this work. Be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self-Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited to tackle this topic of the struggles ADHD women have with getting themselves to focus and feel motivated with ADHD. And one of the biggest challenges I see, like for sure, before I even go down that path, our ADHD brains functioning in this neurotypical society is already a challenge. And so some of how our brains are wired is going to naturally make focus challenging because we're more easily distractible, and also might make it hard for us to feel motivated, especially if we are trying to motivate ourselves by doing things because they're important to ourselves or someone else. And so that's fair. For sure, ADHD is a piece of this. So I in no way want to say, like, once you regulate your nervous system, you'll never have trouble focusing again, because that's not true. And when your nervous system is dysregulated, it is going to be almost impossible to get yourself to really focus, be productive, and feel motivated to start and complete tasks. And I want to talk a little bit about why that is. So first, before we go there, I want to talk about what I even mean, or people like me mean, when we say dysregulated nervous system. The term nervous system is tossed around a lot lately, and we're not necessarily talking about your entire nervous system. Your nervous system has a lot of roles. There's a lot of different pieces to it. And even the part of the nervous system that I'm talking about when we talk about getting regulated, your autonomic nervous system, does more than what we're going to talk about. What I am talking about, though, is how your nervous system is wired for survival, so that when you perceive a threat and your brain, your nervous system, considers it a life-threatening danger, your nervous system will respond by doing certain things to make sure you survive. And so when you perceive a threat, whether that's a bear chasing you or a nasty comment on social media, either way, your brain, your nervous system automatically responds by putting you into your fight or flight response. In that moment, you've got like a very tiny little window of time to stop this process from happening, to notice like, oh, that's actually not a threat, and stop the fight or flight response from going on. It's like, I think it's like a couple seconds, or maybe it's even like a couple milliseconds. I can't remember, but it's a very short window. And once you tip into your fight or flight response because your nervous system has perceived a threat, your body will be flooded with biochemicals, including adrenaline, noradrenaline, also known as norepinephrine, and cortisol. And those biochemicals are there to help you fight or flee. And if for some reason you are unable to get away from the danger and your nervous system determines, nope, all hope is lost, then you will go into your shutdown response, your dorsal vagal response, where you will feel more numb and disconnected. That fight or flight response is going to feel more anxious, like anxiety or restlessness, on edge, fidgety, can't sit still. That's oftentimes the can't get ourselves to focus place, where you're either doing this standing, like I'll do this in my kitchen sometimes, like, wait, I'm supposed to go do this. Oh no, wait, I'm supposed to do this. And you're kind of turning or going in circles. But you can even do this turning in circles at your desk, right? Inside of your head around what needs to happen next. And so it can feel like that. It can feel like a wiry kind of excitability energy that you just feel this urge to get out, to avoid or to fight or flee. And it's legitimate because your nervous system in that moment is only focused on survival. So when you're in your fight or flight response, when you're in your shutdown response, your body's only priority is helping you survive the threat that has been perceived. That is why it feels next to impossible to get yourself to do whatever's on your to-do list, whether that's laundry or whether it's organizing thoughts for your podcast or sending out emails, whatever it is. If your nervous system is dysregulated, that stuff's off the table. Your nervous system's only priority becomes helping you survive the threat. And the hard part is your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a bear chasing you and a hater on social media or someone complaining about your product or service. It doesn't know the difference. Or an eye roll from a loved one who doesn't get what you're trying to do, right? Or a shaming, critical comment about your ADHD struggles. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference. And so you will peak, at least not initially. You can do some work to help, but your nervous system is just responding to the perceived threat. And so that can lead to this spinning, right? And so we want to be able to catch that and deal with our underlying stuff, our old wounds and perhaps even trauma that we hold from growing up ADHD in a society that doesn't really like the way ADHD people would naturally behave if we didn't learn to mask it all or change our behavior to be more neurotypical. And so a lot of us have those old wounds, and so then we can get triggered even more easily and by things like a hater or a complaint or criticism because we already have all that. And our brain actually tends to be much more sticky in terms of holding on to those kind of comments. That's why we can end up kind of ruminating and stuck in those spirals. But my point is, relative to this, is that when you're in that spin, chances are you're in your fight or flight response. And if you're not sure, you can just notice what your body feels like. If it feels anything other than like a lightness or a state of flow, I mean, it can be an excitement. It doesn't have to be this icky feeling or completely calm. But anything that feels like anxious energy and not excited, joyful, with more of a grounded energy to that excited, is probably more indicative of a fight or flight response. It doesn't mean you can't be excited and not feel 100% grounded. I mean, you're going to feel a little off the air, but when you feel kind of that wiry, fidgety energy, that's what it feels like to be dysregulated. And it's going to be a little bit different for each of us. So it's important that you get to know what your own unique responses are. Another piece is when your nervous system puts you into shutdown, you're going to then have trouble really like getting off the couch. That's going to be that stuck on the couch feeling where you have a really hard time motivating yourself. You might feel numb. You might do things to numb, like scroll social media or binge Netflix, drink wine. You might feel disconnected or even depressed or dissociative. Dissociative is like kind of disconnected from your experience, even a little disconnected from your body. And remember, these things aren't bad. These are actually to help you survive. real life danger. It's just that our nervous systems, this part of our nervous systems, I should say, haven't really been updated for modern society because you still could theoretically on a hike bump into a bear. Or, if you live in the jungle, I don't know, maybe you could bump into a tiger. So it's important that we still have that more, I don't want to say archaic, but more primitive fight or flight response to respond to those kinds of danger. But our nervous system, this part of our nervous system doesn't really have a good way to determine, okay, is this like life-threatening danger or is this like emotionally upsetting danger, right? It doesn't know. And so that's important to understand because you're going to go into these responses either way. And then suddenly it's going to feel impossible, like almost like you're dragging your feet in concrete to get yourself to focus and get motivated to do stuff. And depending on which response you're in, it's going to feel different. For me, the fight or flight response is more that like jittery energy where I'm all over the place. I feel scattered. I'm like, oh, I got to do this task. Now I got to do this task. Now I got to do this task. And you're just kind of running like that on a motor. Whereas the shutdown response is more the stuck on the couch, right? And they're going to feel a little different, but you kind of get the idea. This is a problem if you are trying to get stuff done for your business. Because focus is hard enough. Motivation can be hard enough with ADHD in our neurotypical society, especially if you are trying to do it the neurotypical ways. But on top of that, if you are also dysregulated, meaning in your fight or flight or shutdown response, or bouncing back between the two, it's going to be really, really hard to focus, to avoid distraction, or not let it take you off track as long or as frequently, as well as get your butt moving and finish what you set out to do. So nervous system regulation becomes a really, really crucial piece of working with ADHD because sure, this is true for anyone. Anyone with a dysregulated nervous system might have a hard time focusing or feeling motivated to do stuff. It's just that our brains already struggle with those things. So a dysregulated nervous system just makes it feel like it exacerbates it. It just makes it so, so much harder. So I want to talk a little bit about what you can do. Obviously, regulate, but it's different depending on what state you're in. So if you are in your fight or flight response or what people call the freeze response, and I didn't mention that before, but I'll just pause for a moment. The freeze response is still more fight or flight energy with some shutdowns starting. So the freeze response, if you look at a deer who's frozen, yes, they are standing still and their eyes are big. I mean, we call it deer in the headlights, right? But their blood pressure, their heart rate is still high. Their breath rate is still one that would help them fight or flee. So there's still a lot of that fight or flee energy going on in the freeze response, even though your body might be still. So it's, I don't know. Frank Anderson, my IFS level 2 trainer, said it's closer to fight or flight response. However, there is a little bit of a shutdown element when you consider the stillness. So just I would consider using strategies to regulate from the freeze response as similar to the fight or flight response. But if that doesn't work, then for sure use the ones from the shutdown response. But basically, if you're feeling that amped energy, chances are, whether you're in the freeze response or fight or flight response, it will require the same, I don't want to say interventions, but the same strategies to help you get regulated. So because the shutdown response is one of immobilization to protect, and that might seem kind of crazy, like wild, like, wait a minute, like how is it protecting to shut down? Well, let me back up. If you think about cheetah chasing a gazelle, which is a little graphic, but if you think about a cheetah chasing a gazelle, at first the gazelle is in its fight or flight response. It is running, 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 trying to get away because it somehow knows it can't fight a cheetah, but somehow doesn't, like maybe it thinks it has a chance of outrunning it, even though the cheetah's the fastest animal in the world still, I believe. But it just flees, but eventually it realizes that it's not going to escape the danger. So then it shuts down. Its nervous system shuts down. It goes dorsal vagal. In the animal kingdom, we call this playing dead. And because it looks like they're dead. What's actually happening is they're shut down. And one of the things that happens is pain signals for emotional pain and physical pain are decreased. Not gone, but decreased. That's that numbness that you can feel in that shutdown. And that's a really good thing if you're about to be eaten alive by a cheetah, right? And the good news is when the cheetah goes off to get his cheetah family, the gazelle can still pop up and run away should that happen. So there is good news that can happen there, which means if you're in your shutdown response, that doesn't just mean you're stuck there forever now. But it does mean helping you regulate, which will mean get moving. Because this is a state, a nervous system response that is helping protect you, helping you survive. I mean, quote unquote, survive through immobilization, through lack of movement. So any movement at all is going to be able to help you get out of the dorsal vagal shutdown response. Now, I want a couple things about that. Number one, when you do that, if you're feeling shut down and you bring movement in, you might pop into your fight or flight response. So make sure you're prepared to regulate from there as well. But secondly, you don't want to do anything to regulate if you need to be in your shutdown response. Like, I don't know, if someone's robbing you and you run away and you hide and then you're frozen behind a tree. I don't know why that's in my head, but like, you don't want to suddenly regulate yourself because you need to be in your protective responses so you can survive the situation. So it's really important that you not do anything to regulate until it's safe enough to do so, whichever response you're in. So when you're in that shutdown place, stuck on the couch phase, numb, disconnected, even depressed or dissociative, the way to get out of that state is any movement at all, even visualizing movement. So let's say you cannot, for the life of you, get yourself to do anything. Visualize yourself going for a walk. Visualize yourself dancing. Sometimes even looking out the window at nature can help. So doing some of those things to help you start to regulate. Then when you're in your fight or flight response, whether you're there from the shutdown response or because you're there, because that's a state of protection or survival through mobilization, to regulate out of the fight or flight response when it's safe enough to do so, you need fluid movement with breath. So that could be a yoga sun salutation. It could be more of a mindful walk. It could be doing a breathing technique, although sometimes when we're in our fight or flight response, the last thing that's on our mind is breathing. So sometimes we need to get movement in first, and then we can do some more regulated breath. You've heard me share this on the podcast before. One of my favorite regulation tools it comes from Yoga Calm, which is actually a yoga for kids program. It's really cool, called volcano breathing. And the reason I like it so much is it involves movement. So any movement at all will get you from your shutdown response, right? So it can be used in the shutdown response. And it is movement with fluid breath. And so it can also help you regulate from the fight or flight response. So I'm going to walk you through that one now in case you haven't heard it in another video. And then after that, I'm going to share a cool thing I'm doing that's relatively low cost, like a low entry point, so you can get in and do some of this work. Because you may have heard me talk about this before and you're like, yeah, I know I need to regulate my nervous system, but I just can't get myself to do it. Well, then I've got something for you, but hold on. So to do volcano breathing, what you do is you place your palms together in front of your heart, in front of your chest. And on an inhale breath, you're going to reach your arms all the way up overhead. And as you exhale, you reach your arms down around by your sides and back to center. Let's do that 2 more times. Why not? Inhaling, reaching up. Exhaling, reaching down around and back to center. You're welcome to do that 1 more time. Maybe inhaling as you reach up. Maybe exhaling down around by your side and back to center. And you're welcome to do that more I notice I already feel so much more regulated after doing that. So you're welcome to practice that skill in the moment when you're feeling dysregulated, whether you feel shut down or in your fight or flight response, as well as just regularly every day to create a nice baseline state of regulation. So, this is all great to talk about and give you lots of ideas of what to do and why it's important to do this. But what I find a lot of ADHD women have a hard time with, and really ADHDers in general, but I work with women, is getting ourselves to do the thing. It's like, yeah, I totally may do that. And then I don't know if you're like most, you don't. So I created a 28-day challenge. I've just done my first one in January 2025, and it's going really, really well. The women are getting a lot out of it. I have made it super accessible and simple in the best ways so that you can just do the work. So there's not a platform even that you have to get on and navigate. It's just legitimately weekly videos teaching you something new about regulation, about your nervous system that would help you if you understand those things. It will actually make it easier to regulate longer term without being dependent on someone like me, as well as ways to regulate, how to prevent burnout through regulation, and then last but not least, how to start to handle some of those triggers that cause you to get dysregulated. So it's a 28-day challenge, and you get 2 weekly videos. One is informational with those topics I just shared, and, well, one of those also has an exercise to help you get to know your own nervous system responses. And then on top of that, each week you get a practice video. Those come out every week on, it's like Saturday, 10 p.m. Central Time, with the exception of the first week. The first week we have a kickoff call, and then that comes out after. But you get those each week on late Saturday night into Sunday, depending on what time zone you're in. And then you can practice those things. There's a Facebook group where I'm sharing lots of strategies in there, doing lots of asynchronous coaching, some lives to share extra stuff. And then on top of it, every single day you get an email for accountability. And it has one question: did you do something to regulate today? And it's a poll, so that way I can know how everyone's doing. On top of that, each week we have a check-in call where everyone who's available can come on and share how they're doing, share their wins, share their challenges, and we can explore what to do to really help them be accountable to themselves and get themselves to regulate throughout the month. So it's really cool for people who can't attend the calls. You can put your questions in the Facebook group, and I will create a video answering. So it'll be a little asynchronous, but you'll still have an opportunity to get that. So this is super awesome, I think. I mean, if I do say so myself, because the first 25 people who sign up get it for $9.97. Like, for all 28 days, all that stuff. If you're not one of the first 25, it's only $19.97. So $19.97. So even if you know what you need to do, but you're really struggling to do it, like I've got one person who is like, yeah, I know all this, I'm just not doing it. They're still getting a lot out of this. So whether you're there, whether you know nothing about the nervous system, this challenge is for you. So I will put a link in the show notes so that you can either sign up for the challenge if the sign up is open, if we're not in the middle of a challenge, or if we are in the middle of a challenge and you would be having to sign up for the next challenge, like the next month's challenge, because I think I'm just going to keep doing these as long as people are signing up, because it seems to be really powerful and people are getting a lot out of it. So why not, right? So if for some reason we are like you've passed the date of registering for the next month's challenge, then there'll be a pop-up screen that says, hey, this month is full, sign up here for the priority notification list. And then you can be put on that list to be notified when you're able to register for the next month. So be sure to check that out in the show notes. This is one of my passions, is nervous system regulation. I'm a yoga teacher. In my other biz, I'm a therapist, and I love helping people get regulated in their nervous systems. And with everything going on in the world right now, this seems even more important than ever. So make sure you check out the link in the show notes. And if you're not following or subscribed to this podcast yet, please do. I would love it if you would share. All right, y'all, take care.